Hey guys, what's up? It's Sydney, and welcome back to another Haunted Locations episode. And this week we are going to be talking about one of the scariest haunted places, in my opinion, in the United States, and that is the Villisca Axe Murder House. Now, this house is located in Villisca, Iowa. To me, this house looks creepy by itself without knowing any of the history. It is definitely more of a gory murder than we have covered in the past. This house was considered to be a very nice and beautiful house back when it was inhabited in 1912. Now it does sit not abandoned but used for basically paranormal investigation purposes. Anybody who wants to see the house can go there, but there are a few things that I would recommend you knowing before you go there if you do plan on visiting this house. Now, before we get into the hauntings and the everything like that, the paranormal activity, I do have to go over the story a bit just for context so you guys understand how menacing and terrible and horrific this crime actually was. So just bear with me because we're going to go a little bit into the crime details first. On June 10th in 1912, 8 murders took place in this house. A family of 6 and 2 guests were bludgeoned to death with an axe. This was the Moore family, the mother, the father, their 3 sons and 1 daughter, and the 2 friends were the Sillinger girls. The last place that the family and the 2 girls were seen alive was at the Presbyterian church, where the mother of the Moore family put together an event for the church, and they all left about 9:30 p.m. The family and the 2 girls started walking back to the Moore home. Their friends and fellow worshipers were not concerned, as the family had walked home from the church many times. It is also noteworthy to point out that no one really in the neighborhood heard anything out of the ordinary that night, and it was just a very quiet evening like any other night. But in the morning, their neighbor, Mary Peckham, at about 5 a.m. noticed that they were not awake yet and they weren't up and doing like their chores and stuff, so she got a little bit concerned. So by 7 a.m. she contacted the brother of the father of the family, and he came over to investigate. Just like Mary, the neighbor, tried to get into the home, he eventually used his key to let himself in, and that is when he unfortunately discovered the bloody, gruesome scene. He immediately contacted the law enforcement of that time. It was basically just a town marshal, so he notified the town marshal, and the town marshal came to the house, and there were 2 doctors with him. They did a quick examination of the house and found everybody murdered in their beds. But before this examination of the home was put into play, the town marshal made the mistake of mentioning the murders to some townspeople, and word got out very, very quickly about these murders. As this was an incredibly small town, about 2,000 people at the time in 1912, this was basically like a rarity. Nothing like this had ever happened there. And I don't say rarity in a good way. It was something very bad, but obviously something like this causes a society to freak out, and basically it gains attention really quickly because everyone's worried about their own safety and everyone wants to know what happened. It's just a natural way of humans. We are curious and we want to know. That being said, I do not approve of what went on next. So basically, they all heard about these murders, and about 100 people ransacked the house. They went through the bedrooms. They saw the bloody bodies in their beds. They saw the blood splatter on the ceiling, on the walls. They saw the axe that was actually left there, and they basically contaminated the evidence. And I think it's incredibly disrespectful, obviously, to basically walk through a crime scene and basically point and be like, oh my God, look at that body. Like, that's so incredibly disrespectful. And I know that it's like human nature in a way. We all are very curious, but this is going over the line. Due to this, there was very little evidence, and as far as it being committed in like our time period, they would have had a much better chance of solving this murder. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the technology that we do today to solve crimes. They went off of what they had, and they were baffled. They could not figure out who was responsible for this mass murder. There were many suspects, false accusations, news coverage, and even false confessions with this crime because of how big it was in the media at the time. Eventually, this case did go cold and, in my opinion, dead, because this case is over 100 years old and, in my opinion, will never be solved. But at the same time, it's kind of insane because some of the suspects were, high society men and were expected to be of good moral standing. So even if the crime was solved, that person is already dead who committed this crime. There's no way that they could still be alive. There's not really a point because there would be no justice for the family and for those two little girls. So this case does remain unsolved to this day, and it's very, very sad and terrible. I think that the reason why there's so much activity in this house is because the way that they were disrespected in their death. It was basically a form of entertainment for some people at that time, and that's just disgusting. But like I said, you can go to this house and see it. It was purchased and restored to its original condition that it was in 1912, so no electricity or plumbing. But I think it would definitely be worth it. So it is definitely on my bucket list. I would love to go see this location. Now, I would imagine that the way the townspeople disrespected the bodies and the crime scene is why there are actually some violent reports of attacks. So in 2014, a man was there with a group of friends and they were doing a paranormal investigation. They separated within the house, and at around 12:45 a.m., one of the men actually was found with a self-inflicted stab wound. Now, the time is actually very significant in his injury because at 12:45 a.m. on June 10th in 1912 is actually when the murders took place at the exact time. So it was very odd that at 12:45 a.m. is when he received his injury. Now, yes, you can say, oh, it's self-inflicted, he gave it to himself. Well, yeah, no shit, he gave it to himself. But was that him, or was that something influencing him to stab himself? Because I'm sorry, no matter how badly you want a story or something like that, it's not that easy to stab yourself. I mean, our natural instinct is to protect ourselves and survive. So to stab yourself is a little psychotic. And maybe he was psychotic, I don't know. But in my opinion, I think it's something else. Now, I did also read that on the property there are actually pictures posted of what people have captured there as far as evidence goes. And there is actually one picture of a man who had scratches all down his back, very deep, very intense scratches. So that is kind of terrifying in a way as well, because usually scratches are associated with like demonic energy or demons, and that's never good. So as far as that goes, that's kind of terrifying. People also hear children's voices. They hear disembodied footsteps. They also hear cries of pain and despair. Visitors here have also seen orbs, full-bodied apparitions, shadow people, which is basically like shadow figures moving in the corner of your eyes, as well as seeing children's full-bodied apparitions in the corner of their eyes as well. And when they go to look, it's not there. And people have also reported seeing objects move within the home. So definitely quite terrifying as far as the paranormal activity goes. This one doesn't scare me half as bad as some of the locations that I've covered in the past, like the Moon River Brewing Company. That one scares the shit out of me, but this one not so much. It is definitely obviously terrible of what happened there, and I can't even imagine the fear and the terror that those people felt going through the last moments of their life. But as far as a paranormal investigative side of it, I think it would be incredibly cool to go here and just kind of see if you can pick up on anything and maybe even help them kind of move on in a way. Like I said, I would definitely love to visit this place. It is in Iowa, which is actually where my mom is from. So I believe I do have some family that still live there. So I might just make a trip out of it and see my family as well as this crazy murder house. Might as well, right? But that's all I have for you guys today on the Villisca Axe Murder House. So if you do want to look more into the actual crime of it, it is very interesting and very detailed. There are so many suspects, like I said. So if you want to check it out, I definitely recommend it. The details of the crime will shock you. It is definitely one of the more gruesome crime scenes that I've looked into as far as the amount of blood that was on the walls, and there was even brain matter splattered throughout the walls and on the bed and stuff. So this is a very, very gruesome murder and very intense crime that shook the whole nation. So I would definitely recommend looking into it if you want to. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to go ahead and give me a follow, you can in the outro. All the information will be there, and I will see you next Wednesday for another Haunted Locations episode. Bye.